Should you study only 300 hours for the CFA Level 2 exam? The answer to that is no. And the reason why is because it's simply not enough time to consume this level of information, this amount of information. Now, this is coming from the perspective of someone who does not have a formal finance background. I went to college and I did my master's in two different subjects. Now, for those of you who did do your bachelor's and your master's or your master's in finance, this may not apply to you. However, if you want to be conservative in your approach to this exam, and if you have a similar background to myself, then this video is probably for you. Now, my study period was from August to May, August 2022 to May of 2023. I passed on my first attempt. The pass rate was 52% of this last cohort, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I was able to do it from my documented time. Notice I said documented, because towards the end of the video, I'm going to talk about my undocumented time. But we're going to start and focus on my documented time. Now, I documented roughly about 420 hours. Now, that's split between the readings and watching videos and practicing questions. So about 61% of that time was dedicated towards the readings and watching videos, primarily Mark Meldrum. Now, I did sometimes watch some CFA videos on YouTube to kind of just fill in some gaps, but most of that was Mark Meldrum videos. 39% was practicing questions, whether it was from the physical books or Mark Meldrum's practice questions, or the additional questions that you kind of find on the online learning portal that the CFA provides that you actually don't find in the books. They actually add more questions on the online portal. So that's how it was split up. And I allocated my time in the beginning of the study period. I'm going to say that I did not follow this to a T, but I'm going to show you what I did. This is how I set up my actual schedule from August to May. August 11th to September 15th, financial statement analysis. September 16th to October 12th, fixed income. October 13th to November 9th, quantitative methods. November 10th to November 22nd, derivatives. November 23rd to December 10th, economics. December 11th to January 12th, portfolio management. January 13th to February 21st, equity evaluation. February 22nd to March 7th, alternative investments. March 8th to April 3rd, corporate issuers. April 4th to April 23rd, ethics. Now, I actually finished the curriculum by February. So I did not follow this to a T, but for the most part, I did it within or before the time that I allocated. And I did study ethics throughout the curriculum. I actually did not wait until the end, because that was a tip that I heard from people to just study it throughout, because level 2 ethics is a different beast than level 1 ethics. And in a following video that I'm going to make, I'll show you why that's the case, specifically for me. So roughly 10% of the time I spent studying quant. Now, I will say that I did have a bit of a background with regression and multiple regression from other things that I did in my past outside of the CFA curriculum. So it wasn't too difficult for me to understand. A lot of the time, as you can see, was more so dedicated towards the big data project stuff, the step-by-step approach that they took. It just was new to me. So I had to kind of spend more time on that. Next up, economics. Now, economics is kind of cut off there, but I spent about 32 hours on that, which is roughly 7% of the time was spent on ethics. Most of that on currency exchange rates, because that was a beast of the learning material in the book. So I did spend a lot of time really kind of understanding and honing in on those concepts, because there's a lot of there's just a lot of varied content in that reading, and I just thought it was a lot that I just needed to focus on. Economic growth was a sneaky one for me, actually. I thought I knew it. I thought it was easy, but then I would do practice questions and I would say, oh, wow, I really don't know this in the way that I think I do, especially when it came to understanding this, the concept of the steady state, which I think is a really interesting concept. Um, Financial statement analysis, I heard this one was a beast, so I definitely spent additional time on this. I spent about 15% of the time on this. And as you can see, most of that time was dedicated towards intercorporate investments and employee compensation. There's a lot of those really strange calculations and a lot of information they have to really put into your head for those two readings or those two chapters. Yeah, readings. I did spend a little bit more time on evaluating quality of financial statements, just because there's a lot of information there as well. But for the most part, I did lean heavy into intercorporate investments and employee compensation. Next up, let's talk about corporate issuers. Corporate issuers, I did spend, just one second. You can't see it here, but I spent about close to 8% of my time on corporate issuers. I probably should have spent more time on this, but I did spend more time on the cost of capital because there's so many equations that I had to know. So that's corporate issuers. For equity, I spent a heap of time on, about 11% of my time on this, documented, and most of that was spent on private company valuation, discounted cash flow, and then you can't really see it there, but also free cash flow valuation and market-based valuation, specifically on those quizzes, because again, you read through the stuff, you think it's easy, but then when you get asked questions, you're like, wait, what? So I found that to be the case when I was doing free cash flow and market-based evaluation questions. I would get asked questions and I would be like, wait, I guess I don't know this in the way that I thought I did. Fixed income, I also spent a lot of time on, about 12% of my time. And a lot of that was definitely on credit analysis models and the valuation analysis section. Also, a lot of time was spent on the term structure. And a lot of people might find that first section to be easy, but again, that's a section that's a lot of information on it, and you just kind of have to know it like the back of your hand, because it's not one of those things where you can be asked a question and you're like, I could kind of logic my way out of this. No, you kind of have to know it. So I did spend a lot of time on that. Next up, derivatives. Now, derivatives, I spent 8% of my time on, documented. And I probably spent more time on this undocumented, but I'll get to that later. Documented, I spent a lot of time on this. And honestly, a lot of it was on the pricing and valuation for forward commitments. I just thought that there were so many more formulas there that I had to know relative to the valuation of contingent claims. Next up, alternative investments. I didn't spend too much time on this, and I kind of wish I did on the real estate side of things. Real estate was actually kind of interesting, but by the time I got to this part of the curriculum, I was kind of bored. So I didn't spend too much time on it. Private equity investments was really interesting. So I did spend a decent amount of time on that. Commodities actually wasn't too bad for me because I actually have somewhat of a background in commodities. I actually had an old YouTube channel where I just talked about gold and silver a lot. So I had a pretty good, at least, foundation for commodities. Portfolio management. I spent about 13% of my time on, and it looks like I spent most of my time on the analysis of active portfolio management. And that makes sense because that section was a beast, in my opinion. It's probably one of the harder sections to kind of wrap your head around. In my opinion, it's one of the most important sections to wrap your head around. So I spent a lot of time on that. I also love time on multi-factor models and measuring and managing risk. And I do think, looking back, I would have spent more time on ETFs and trading costs as well. I didn't as much in my documented time, but I did in my undocumented time. And we're going to get to that soon. And last but not least, let's talk about ethics. I spent most of my time actually memorizing the standards of practice and the guidance, actually. And I will say that the most important thing that you should probably do is study the guidance. Yes, know the code of ethics. Yes, know the standards of practice, and the ins and outs of that. But if I were to implore anybody to study anything out of this, it is the guidance section. Go to the book, open the guidance section, look at every single detail and every single thing that they say. Well, here's a little detail where the standards of practice kind of applies to, but you won't find it listed in the actual SOPs and the outlines within the SOPs. You have to go into the guidance to look at the little detail and the minor little things here and there. Then you have to commit those things to memory because those things will be testable. So in that situation, I would definitely say get the books, open up the guidance, and you'll be good to go there. So that's my documented time, and that's how it was allocated. Now, I finished up the curriculum roughly around February. From February to March, I just kind of was just filling the gaps in kind of a haphazard way. In April, I did my first mock exam, and I got a 64% on the mock exam. And for me, that wasn't enough. I felt like, to be comfortable, I wanted to hit that 70% that the CFA recommends. And I just went crazy. I just started to do as much as I could as far as practicing mock exams and really filling in the details and the gaps of the LOSs that I didn't know. I talk about this in detail in my last video. But I also recently just put out the spreadsheet that I use to help document the questions that I got wrong, right, guessed right on mock exams. That really helped me to hone in on what I needed to study. Again, this was kind of during my undocumented time. And I think this was the main differentiator for me kind of maybe passing, having that 64%, to getting up to a 68% consistently towards the end of my mock exam practicing. And that led me to have a passing score that was in between the minimum passing score and the 90th percentile. So who knows, maybe if I took the exam in April, maybe I would have passed and I would have been right on the minimum passing score line. But to me, that's not enough to feel comfortable. Now, if I had to add my documented and undocumented time together, I probably studied roughly around 650 hours. So I did put in a heap of energy in that undocumented time. So again, if you want to see how I was able to really pass on my first attempt, check out this video here.